Hello and welcome to Talk Thursday. Today we have a low-key man who holds tremendous power, but you wouldn't know it from the way he works behind the scenes. He's very humble. The former commander of the Philippine Navy, he is Emilio Aguinaldo's grandson. Most recently, he was the principal author of the Sin Tax Bill, which finally passed the House of Representatives after more than a decade. He was also the House's impeachment manager and chairman of the powerful Appropriations Committee. He is the money man. And for politics, he's also the Secretary General of the Liberal Party. Please join me in welcoming Representative June Abaya. Hello.
Hi, Marisa.
Tweet your questions to him at Rappler.com or post it on Rappler's Facebook page. Welcome. Thank you for coming here today and talking to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm the great-grandson, not the grandson.
The great-grandson. I'm sorry. So he's the great-grandson of
adjustment.
Emilio Aguinaldo. Shortly after Independence Day. Very fitting. Our title is Power and the Future. And let me go through the power that you do have and where things are headed in the future.
Kindly brief me on
Let me go backwards in time a little bit.
Okay.
As impeachment manager of the House of Representatives, how did you allow a flawed impeachment complaint to pass the House of Representatives?
Well, of course, I wouldn't admit it was flawed. Although we thought it was perfect. Because I was sincerely prepared by good, excellent volunteer lawyers. Of course, it's always 2020 in hindsight.
Right.
But we did believe from the start that it was in the right form. Of course, people could always pick holes on it, but we just managed what was there, and I think we survived and accomplished our mission.
But in retrospect, I mean, people have said that some of the congressmen didn't even read through it. In retrospect, what lessons did you learn from that process?
Well, for me, I think that was propaganda. Clearly, the Constitution provides that there's a one-third method of doing it. There are policy reasons behind it. Whether it was attested to or acknowledged properly. I think we did so in our earnest way. We, of course, enjoyed the presumption of regularity in our procedures in the House. So I think we did what we had to do.
And the implications now of the conviction that's happened, what does this mean for the country?
Well, I think it goes beyond what we actually saw. We went there because we believe that the Chief Justice violated, is impeachable and should be convicted for certain violations. But based on the text, the congratulatory messages we got, people see it more than mere conviction. It's a dawning of a reform era of change. Hopefully it's not merely confined to the judiciary, it would branch out to other branches of government and probably even to private sector, because I know the most popular acronym today is the SALN, and chances are next to that would be our income tax returns, the ITRs.
Yes.
And for sure, all government officials will now be very careful in filling up those two almost neglected documents before. So that's one nice thing, unexpected accomplishment that we've done.
Do you think our lawmakers are prepared for the kind of scrutiny they've now set up?
Well, whether they're prepared or not, they're forced by circumstance to take those documents seriously, whether we like it or not.
Let me move you on to the Sin Tax Bill, which you're the principal author of the Sin Tax Bill. What made this one different? I mean, it took more than a decade to pass it through. What made this different, and what were the roadblocks you had to barrel over to get it through?
Honestly, the difference between our situation now and the situation of bills previously filed of the same nature, it is the leadership of the president. I personally feel that the reason why previous bills and probably espousing the same structural reforms were not passed was I don't think they had a precedent behind them. But this time, clearly, the president, though he is a smoker, is clearly behind us, and I think I could attribute that to the success for the meantime for the bill. And likewise, the advocates amongst the congressmen who do believe that the bill would do good for society.
Why is this so important? Why
Well,
did you do this?
for me, primarily, I look at it from the health objective, the health aspect. When I was first briefed on this bill, I asked DOF what excise taxes were for, and clearly I remember I learned a new word, sumptuary. It has a sumptuary objective, and looking that up in the dictionary, it's actually regulating a particular habit. Chances are these are bad habits,
Right.
to achieve certain goals. And clearly, what we're trying to regulate here is the bad habit of smoking and drinking. DOH data would present 170 billion in health costs. If you compare this to revenues that we get from the current law, it's roughly around 15 to 20 billion. And even on the high side of the original bill, this would be at 60 billion. So you're looking at a ratio of 1:7 or 1:4, that no matter what you do to raise funds, you'll always be in a deficit compared to the health angle. So what we're trying to do here is to raise revenue such that cigarettes and alcohol will be beyond the range or affordability for the poor and the youth. I mean, rich guys who could afford to protect themselves, they can do so, they continue with them. But the most vulnerable and price-sensitive sectors are the poor and the youth, and that's the sector that we want to protect.
There was tremendous resistance to this from tobacco companies. I mean, essentially, it seemed to have leveled the playing field. Is that correct?
Yes, the resistance mainly would come from the congressmen from the tobacco producing areas, from the north, the Northern Alliance. Of course, farmers, tobacco farmers will be affected, but what is here, what you mentioned, is leveling the playing field.
Yes.
That is one of the accomplishments that we've done to the bill, because people wouldn't know that there was a price freeze here. Prices were pegged in 1996.
Correct.
And all changes made since then were all cosmetic. And even if in the current law, if a newcomer comes in exactly the same cigarette quality, package, whatever, they will have to pay a higher price as compared to the same player who has been here before. So with the new bill, everyone starts at zero and will be in the same plane if it is exactly the same product.
Protectionist. Is it fair to say that this bill gets rid of protectionist?
Yes, definitely.
And what does this mean in terms of revenues for the government?
Well, in terms of revenue, the original bill pegged it at 60 billion, that's 60, where you could basically cut it into 50-50, 50 for alcohol and 50. So 50%, 50%, 30 alcohol, 30 for tobacco. With the amended version, because of certain consultations, it is now ranging between 33 and probably as high as 40, depending on the assumption of elasticity.
So you really weren't able to get rid completely of the tierings. There's still a tier.
There's still
there.
tierings. The original bill, let's say for tobacco, we would have shifted to 2, but in the third year it becomes unitary. What we have now for tobacco is still at 2, but that would take some time before it becomes unitary. Alcohol, I think there would be improvements that have to be made. We wanted 2, it's now at 3. So I think I always say this is round 3 in a multi-round event. So
Who were the losers? Who were the gainers?
in fact, I don't see any losers here, except for the dominant players who basically have their own monopoly or their oligopoly. But for the people, and in fact, after the vote, when I was asked by media, the biggest irony here, the very congressmen who opposed this bill, their constituents will be the biggest gainers, because 15% of the revenues would actually be plowed back to tobacco producing areas, considering these are safety nets and there will be the affected sector. And you're talking about a current level of roughly 4 billion to as high as probably 11.5 billion being plowed back. So what is key here is that governors, congressmen, and municipal mayors who eventually get to handle these funds would actually give it and devote it to improve production for farmers or encourage them for alternative crops farming.
Fantastic. Let me move on to other pending legislation at the House of Representatives. The FOI and the RH bill. Let's start with the Freedom of Information Act. Where is it? What are its chances of passing?
It is now in the committee. I am not directly involved there. My party mate, Congressman Erin Tanyada,
Yes.
is there. The committee chair is Congressman Ben Evardoni. I guess that's one thing we have to look at after the impeachment, to focus on FOI and RH and other pending bills. But that should move forward. I expect that to move forward. Probably of interest to you.
Well, for us,
For you.
actually for greater transparency. But let me run to the RH bill, because it did pass the Senate already, and Senator Cayetano was saying that it's in amendment stage now in the Senate, and she had said that she felt it could pass the Senate as early as August. I mean, what are the chances that the RH bill, which is quite contentious in the House, what are the chances it'll pass, and where is it now?
Well, it's now in plenary. I think it's been there for a long time.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the speaker's guidance will be, because as a tactic, there's still a long line of interpellators. Although it could be declared that we've had enough interpellation, it should be voted upon. I'm not clear of its direction, and well, just to be honest with you, I'm not with it.
I was going to bring that up, where
Just
you
wanna be honest
stand.
before
Yeah, please,
well,
tell
that
us
was
why.
just because of upbringing and faith, nothing more than that. But as a team player of the party and the clear directions of the president, I am not an active opposer. When it went to my committee in the appropriations, we had at most, I think, one or two hearings only. So definitely, I ensured that I wasn't a stumbling block of the bill when it went to the committee.
Could you explain why you're against the RH bill? Or maybe the better way of saying it is why you're not actively supporting, why you're not supporting it.
Well, I still believe that we should have the freedom of to protect life, that life begins upon conception, not upon implantation. And I guess just from that point of view, probably down the road, looking at other countries that probably the problems that they're experiencing now, the reaction was to come up with their own RH bills. And looking at them, probably now they realize it is when you have changed culture, it is very difficult to reverse.
Yes.
So we should learn from. But I do admit, and in fact I've told a few key church officials that important here is you've also been remiss in certain ways. You are an excellent institution in terms of
communicating and pushing for your advocacies, but you've
advocacies.
been very passive as to our age, and because clearly there are issues, relevant issues that should be addressed, and I think you're in a position, given the doctrines of the church, that could
Yes.
address this too. But obviously there's a vacuum, there's a gap there, and I think the church has realized this, and the solution to the lack of resources probably is just better governance rather than controlling population.
I'm fascinated. I can ask you more questions on that, but let's move on because we only have you for a short
Before I
period of
run out
time.
of answers
I know.
too.
Very, very diplomatically put. You talked about political will, and that's part of the reason the sin tax bill passed.
Definitely.
Do either of these two bills, what other pieces of legislation will have the political will from the president, from the ruling party, to actually make it through in time for the end of the 15th Congress?
Well, now syntax, we're halfway,
out through, yes.
done. FOI has been given the go signal, the green light. It is part
The
of
president has been, hot and cold on FOI, hasn't he?
In fairness to him, he was never against it. He has some reservations. I think that has been thrashed out. I'm not privy to those discussions, but
Okay.
it has been incorporated in the bill. So I see a green light on that. And Probably there would be some legislators would have their own personal concerns for it, but I think at the end of the day, if the president gives the order that we push through, then it will be done. I think another key legislation would be antitrust.
Yes.
Of course, you have your own natural oppositors to this, probably certain lobby groups, but it's part of the LEDAC priority.
Yes.
So I see this pushing through too. Of course, the budget's coming up. That should, well, annually is passed anyway. Aside from that, well, our RH really depends on the winds.
I have some interesting questions coming in from social media. From at Tony Shappy, who should be the best candidate or pick for Chief Justice?
Who would it be? I wouldn't know. I don't have enough. My network isn't that big enough to come up with a recommendee for the Chief Justice. Well, I could describe who that will be.
Please.
I think what is clear is that he should be a champion for judicial reforms, because this would be just the second chapter of
Correct.
the impeachment, and it's an opportunity that shouldn't be wasted.
Okay.
So if any, because I've heard some say, no, the judiciary has been injured, damaged, so the next guy should be a healing Chief Justice. But for me, more important is judicial reforms. If we need to bear some more wounds just to achieve judicial reforms that is really felt for our people, then we should bear those wounds.
This is a question from at Gossip Boy Pinoy. Why did you leave the opposition?
What do you mean?
This kind of,
I don't get.
I'm not exactly certain also.
Why did I leave?
I suppose maybe in the last administration you were opposition and now you're with the...
Well, the
with
Liberal
Senate.
Party last Congress, we were still part of the administration, though we sounded and decided like opposition.
You were actually in a powerful position also in terms of the next Congress. There's another question here from at Cliff E. Lever. Are you going to the Senate in 2013 or 2016?
Definitely not. I don't see myself there. I don't have probably the recall value, I will say pang-artistahin lang siguro yung Senado, but no, I don't see myself.
Well, you're the Secretary General of the Liberal Party now. How do you see the 2013 election shaping up? What are you doing for 2013?
Honestly, it's our first time. People have asked us how come the Liberal Party has remained quiet. We have not talked about our lineup.
Yep.
Honestly, it was our first time to sit down today, because pretty much key party officials are busy serving the people and helping out the president. We try to do this on a multitasking basis, and should be an interesting 2013 elections. Probably there will be just two key lineups. Definitely the Liberal Party will have a full slate. We'll have members coming from other coalition parties to come in, and should be interesting.
Butch Abad says that he's putting up, there's a 2 trillion peso budget that is going that is going to go through the approval process. You're chairman of the Appropriations Committee. I know you say it's not powerful, it's very powerful. You'll see everything and stamp everything you'll help approve what will go through. What do you make of this, and what are the main priorities for you? What are you looking for in the next year's budget?
Well, I haven't received any detail on it, and people have asked, could it be done? And is government optimistic just because sin taxes is just about it? No, I think even without sin taxes, we are just following a trend. In fact, I remember from a 1.6 trillion budget, it's at 1.8. So we're just following the trend. I'm just picking up from the statements of Secretary Abad that there will be emphasis on infrastructure, education, social protection services, which have been there all along since the president assumed. So
yes.
CCT will be further revved up.
Yes.
We're now at 3 million beneficiaries. I think budget will be up to 40 billion. I'm sure there will be a lot of discussions there. Education, clearly, for the first time, a demonstration again of political will. We have K to 12 being implemented, though not fully, I would honestly say not fully studied, but I think the right way to go is just go for it, and you could always adjust it along the way, rather than worry about everything that you never get to take the first step. And clearly, it's I said a demonstration of political will, because probably previous presidents thought there was this. It was so unpopular that it's not worth even going through it. But I think we're one of the last 3 remaining countries in the world that still has a 10-year program. Even not to belittle Myanmar, but Myanmar has a 12-year program, while we have a 10-year, now a 12-year program.
The reform programs for this government, I guess, let me ask you broader, where are we today? Like, how would you assess where we are now as a country, given what's been done behind the scenes?
Well, definitely we're halfway through the 6-year term of the president. In terms of our targets, I don't think there's a clear target by 2016. I think what is important is that we're moving forward. I think we're even surprising ourselves. In fact, one thing that we could expect, I heard people or finance people expect, that when you have a syntax law eventually signed by the president, you could expect credit rating upgrade. Now will become investment grade for the first time, I don't know since when, or probably the first time in our history. And you see, when you see the US getting a downgrade, Spain, Italy, we're going against the grain, going against the trend. So very rare for the Philippines, when we've been used to seeing the Philippines more of the bottom rung rather than excelling. And in fact, our first quarter GDP is 6.4%. Everyone was surprised. Highest in the region, second to China.
Yes.
So,
You've heard,
even the president himself.
you've heard the phrase now. People are talking about PIT, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand. Yeah. What does this mean? I mean, I guess, what do you feel about the future? Are you optimistic, pessimistic? What still needs to be done?
I think that there's all reason to be optimistic. Of course, it's easier said from people like we who live in air-conditioned spaces, but for the poor, it would still take a lot of churning and hard work, because they should be the real measure if we're really moving forward as a country. But I think what the government is doing in terms of CCT reforms in social protection, in maternal health care, in education, I think these are little things. Probably not everyone is happy about, but I think in terms of long-term goals, I think that's the right direction.
Well, it's interesting because there seemed to be a divergence. Soon after impeachment, we had all the economic numbers come in, and they're very good. Perception outside is that the Philippines is doing quite well economically, and yet internally you had the surveys that show trust ratings, approval ratings for President Aquino actually going down, the largest that it's been. What do you make of this, and does he have the support of the people in the same way to push through more reforms?
I think so. I think it's still higher than the average previous president's ratings. It's definitely lower than what he's had.
Yes. Why did he lose it, do you think?
I wouldn't know. I haven't read anything on it. I didn't have time to really think about the details. Well, the most significant activity was the impeachment. Clearly, he was in it, though not actively involved.
Yes. But he took a position.
Yes.
He definitely took a
Clearly,
position.
He was clearly behind us. He was carrying the flag for us.
Right.
It could be that. I'm not sure, but I think at the end of the day, whatever fruits are born from the impeachment. Hopefully that will reverse the rating.
I'll just toss a question for you from social media from Atbuena Bernal. Shouldn't your personal convictions be divorced from your stances in lawmaking? Sorry, this is on the RH bill, I'm assuming. And when you said that you were...
No, I
ahead.
wouldn't agree. Because you could easily read through me if I was divorcing my what I say from what I believe in. I think I appreciate myself more if I'm just true to myself.
Next, another question also. If you wish to deter the habits, this looks like it's from tobacco, why not intensify DOH campaigns instead of increasing cost?
Wouldn't be as effective. In fact, I wouldn't. There have been clear studies. Even increasing sin taxes might not be as effective as people would desire, because we've had a chance to meet with a Vietnamese member of the Communist Party. They were here for a couple of days, and they said they've increased sin taxes 200%, but consumption was still on a rising trend.
Yes.
They're now thinking about increasing it 500%. So it's a tough task. Definitely information and education wouldn't be sufficient. Hopefully sin taxes will create a dent.
Yes.
And if I was just allowed to do it, I would have increased it 500,000% to, if you look at the health aspect.
Yes.
But to clearly make it unaffordable to the youth and to the poor.
Right.
However, it's a balancing act because you have to look after tobacco farmers who probably range around 50,000 and as high as probably a little less than 1 million. So these guys, we just have to balance it all.
An interesting, and this will be the last question from social media for now, from @Tony Shappy. He says, I think this is about how you move through Congress. How do you move forward when no one is on the same page? What would you do?
When no one is
on the same page. So if you're trying to push through a bill that you truly believe in, but you don't have the support for it, what would you do?
Actually, it's very difficult because probably 99% of bills filed there are on various pages. The truly successful bills are those that are prioritized either by the House, the Senate, or the LEDAC, the Legislative and Executive Council. Only when you have and of course, lucky enough, if you have the president behind you, make the task easier. Very, very tough. There are a lot of good bills, but if there are a couple of guys just pushing for it, chances are you get to air it in the committee but wouldn't see the light of day. But it shouldn't be should discourage especially people who participate and try to get their advocacies into the legislature and eventually into law.
Yes.
Because there are bills probably being signed now that were pushed a decade ago. Clearly, sin tax.
Yes, sin tax.
Probably it was a 1996 law. The year after, I think the advocates who lost in 1996 most likely filed a bill in 1997.
Yes.
And it got to see the light of day in 2012. So,
and that really is just the process, isn't it? It's the political will of the people who are there.
yeah, exactly.
There are 5 bills now that are waiting for the president's signature, and among them are 3 that actually had a tough time going through: AMLAC, sin tax, and a climate change law. So if you were to give a fearless forecast, which bills do you think will pass at the end of this 15th
Sin tax, I feel, would be passed. Like I said, round 4 will be in the Senate, round 5 would be in BICAM, but I'm just confident about it because the president is with us, and the very purpose of the bill is very clear, that it will do good for country and people. Climate change, I really don't see any problem. What's the other one?
AMLAC, which already passed.
Yeah, although I think we're missing one more to satisfy the anti-money laundering task force.
Okay. And then I guess before we wrap up, let me ask you, pull out broader now, what are the main things that are priorities for you that you want to make sure happen during this time period?
Well, clearly we have to make sure sin taxes the bill would be passed. We're awaiting the submission of the budget. Without people knowing, it is the most important
Document,
bill passed
yes.
every year, because
Yes.
basically running the country and every individual life of every Filipino is one year affected by the budget. So we're hitting 2 trillion. It's a new record high, and I've always said if we could spend more, a higher budget, properly sourced, meaning not heavily loaned, and properly utilized, is good for country and people. You spend more for your people and generate growth for the economy and bring down services. So it shouldn't be something that we should fear. It is the obligation of government to serve and take care of its people. Pretty much that would be within pretty much the scope of my responsibilities till the end of the year. FOI is around RH. I'll be actively listening,
Just listening.
contributing
Yes,
in one way or
yes,
another.
yes.
But
What are the chances you think it can pass the Congress?
if for a while I thought it would have, if was put to the floor, it would have been a very close vote, 50-50. Some groups have done their own silent surveys. That group, although I think they're also biased for one side,
Yes.
said they're slightly higher, like 9 votes. But
Yes.
9 out of a pool of 280 is easily swingable.
Okay, and then finally, before we end, how would you describe the Philippines today? Where are we, and where do you see the future going?
Well, I think the Philippines today is much better than the Philippines of yesteryears. Definitely, I would say we're prouder as a people and prouder as a nation. We get to hear accolades that we probably couldn't even imagine that could happen to us 5-10 years ago. But surprisingly, we are accomplishing this given the directions of the president, and clearly the often abused word of lacking political will is now being demonstrated. And although probably not in all areas yet, but clearly if political leadership and political will is exercised with your heart in the right place, then we could go places.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for speaking with us. We've been speaking with Representative June Abaya. Thank you for joining us on Talk Thursday. I'm Maria Ressa. If you have more questions, please tweet them. We'll make sure they get to Congressman Abaya. Thank you.